For nearly 4 years, Ukraine's war has devastated lives, leaving a trail of destruction that stretches far beyond the front lines. Families have been torn apart, communities shattered, and the scars of conflict are etched into the very landscape of the country. The conflict has not only redrawn the world's political map, but also forced millions to flee their homes, seeking safety wherever they can. Entire cities have been reduced to rubble, and the human cost continues to mount with each passing day. According to Ukrainian sources, over 1 million Russian troops have been lost, a staggering figure that underscores the relentless brutality of this war. The battlefield is littered with the remnants of shattered hopes and broken machinery. Despite the immense suffering, diplomatic efforts have repeatedly stalled, with world leaders struggling to find common ground. The hopes of peace have flickered, only to be dimmed by renewed violence and mistrust. The last direct talks in Istanbul brought only limited humanitarian progress, offering a brief respite, but failing to address the deeper issues at the heart of the conflict. Since then, negotiations have fallen silent. Months have passed with little more than the ticking of clocks in empty corridors, as hope for a breakthrough faded into the background, until now. As 2025 draws to a close, the world is jolted by a surprising announcement that reignites cautious optimism. President Zelenskyy reveals that the United States, under the Trump administration, is now actively pushing for new direct talks between Ukraine and Russia, an unexpected move that could reshape the course of the war. The proposed venue? Miami, Florida, a world away from the devastation of Eastern Europe, but suddenly the center of global attention as diplomats, journalists, and observers converge in anticipation. This initiative, the first in 6 months, brings a fragile sense of hope mixed with anxiety. For many, it represents a chance for peace. For others, it is a reminder of how much is at stake. Can this American-led effort finally break the deadlock and open a new chapter of reconciliation? Or will it become just another episode in Europe's deadliest conflict since World War II, echoing the tragedies of the past into an uncertain future? The Miami talks are unique. This time, the U.S. is not just a supporter, but the chief mediator. For the first time, Ukrainian, Russian, and American officials will sit together in a trilateral format, breaking from past European or Turkish-led efforts. The U.S. has spent weeks in quiet shuttle diplomacy, laying the groundwork for this bold move. Miami's selection as the venue is symbolic, a neutral American setting, far from Europe's historical baggage. War fatigue and mounting costs have created a rare window for peace. The U.S. hopes its direct involvement can break the stalemate, but it also brings new complexities and interests to the table. Success depends on the willingness of all sides and the skill of American mediators. The world is watching. Will Miami mark a true turning point or just another fleeting hope? The fate of the Miami talks rests with the chosen negotiators, senior envoys, not heads of state, to keep discussions focused and flexible. Ukraine's team is led by Rustem Umerov, a defense expert, signaling Kyiv's serious intent. Russia sends Kirill Dmitriev, a seasoned envoy, ready to present Moscow's terms and test the U.S. approach. The U.S. team is unconventional, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, with Secretary of State Marco Rubio lending diplomatic weight. Rubio insists the U.S. will facilitate, not dictate, a settlement. European delegations, though not at the main table, are present in Miami, ensuring their interests are represented. The EU's support is crucial, as any deal must align with European security and legal principles. The composition of these teams reflects the high stakes and delicate balance of the negotiations. At the heart of the U.S. proposal lies a stark and complex trade-off, offering Ukraine robust security guarantees, modeled closely on NATO's Article 5, in exchange for the possibility of making difficult territorial concessions. These guarantees would mean that, for the first time, Ukraine could count on a formal commitment from the West to defend its sovereignty in the event of future aggression. But this protection comes with a heavy price. For Kyiv, the proposal could represent the strongest shield yet against further attacks, an unprecedented level of security. However, it may also require Ukraine to formally relinquish claims to some of its currently occupied territories, a move that would be both politically and emotionally charged. The idea of trading territory for peace is deeply painful for Ukrainians, challenging their core national principles and collective memory. For many, the thought of giving up land is not just a political decision, but a personal and national wound that reopens old scars from past conflicts. Secretary Rubio emphasizes, no peace deal will be signed unless Ukraine agrees to it, but also none unless Russia does. This underscores the reality that any agreement must be mutual, and that both sides have their own red lines and non-negotiables. The U.S. sees its role as a mediator, not an enforcer, working to facilitate a compromise that both Ukraine and Russia can accept, rather than imposing a solution from the outside. The process is delicate, requiring patience, trust-building, and a willingness to listen to all parties involved. For President Zelenskyy, the decision is agonizing. He must weigh the promise of securing Ukraine's future, with strong U.S. backing against the risk of political backlash at home for any perceived territorial loss. The stakes are enormous, both for his leadership and for the nation's identity. The upcoming Miami talks will revolve around this central dilemma, lasting security versus territorial integrity. Delegates will debate, negotiate, and search for common ground, knowing that the choices made here could shape the fate of millions. The outcome of these negotiations will not only define Ukraine's future, but also set the tone for the region's stability and the world's approach to peace and security in the years ahead. President Zelenskyy approaches the Miami talks with a deep sense of caution, his perspective shaped by years of relentless war, broken promises, and failed negotiations. The scars of conflict are visible not just on the land, but in his measured words and guarded optimism. He knows that every diplomatic step carries enormous consequences for Ukraine's future. Zelenskyy remains skeptical of dramatic breakthroughs, having witnessed too many false dawns. He is wary of any process that might legitimize Russian territorial gains or undermine Ukraine's sovereignty. Yet, he is not closed to dialogue. He's open to any genuine step that could move Ukraine closer to a just and lasting peace, provided it does not come at the cost of his nation's core interests. For Zelenskyy, progress often comes in small, hard-won victories, like prisoner exchanges, humanitarian corridors, and laying the groundwork for future international summits. These incremental steps, though modest, build trust and keep hope alive for a broader resolution. He insists that any agreement must be both just and durable. Zelenskyy rejects the idea of temporary ceasefires or deals that would allow Russia to regroup and renew its offensive. He demands real security guarantees and a peace that will last, not just a pause in the violence. Among the most critical issues for Zelenskyy are the fate of occupied Ukrainian territories and the safety of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. These are not just political questions. They are matters of national survival and the safety of millions. The pressure on Zelenskyy is immense. His people overwhelmingly reject the idea of ceding any land, even as the war's toll grows heavier and international support sometimes wavers. He must balance the fierce resolve of Ukrainians with the harsh realities of war and diplomacy. Sending a delegation to Miami is a calculated risk for Zelenskyy. It's a move designed to test the seriousness of all parties involved, to keep Ukraine's plight at the center of global attention, and to demonstrate Ukraine's unwavering commitment to seeking peace on its own terms. In this moment, Zelenskyy's leadership is a delicate balancing act, projecting strength and resolve, while holding on to a sliver of hope that a real, lasting solution is still possible for Ukraine and its people. Russia's participation in Miami signals a tactical shift. Moscow is willing to engage directly with the U.S., bypassing Europe. Envoy Dmitriev's rhetoric frames Russia as open to peace, but determined to secure its strategic interests. Russia's demands likely include recognition of its territorial gains and guarantees Ukraine won't join NATO. The U.S. offer of security guarantees for Ukraine must avoid resembling NATO membership, a delicate balance. Russia enters talks from a position of battlefield strength, hoping to turn military gains into political ones. For Moscow, Miami is a chance to probe Western unity and push for permanent concessions. The world waits to see if compromise is possible, or if the gulf remains unbridgeable. While the U.S. leads diplomacy, the EU's financial support is Ukraine's lifeline. This week, EU leaders pledged $90 billion for Ukraine through 2027, vital for economic stability and defense. The aid is structured as interest-free loans, repayable only if Russia pays reparations, tying support to accountability. This backing strengthens Ukraine's negotiating position, ensuring it doesn't bargain from desperation. The EU's presence in Miami, even informally, underscores its deep stake in the outcome. European leaders want a deal that upholds sovereignty and doesn't reward aggression. The EU acts as a guardian of international law, reminding all parties that peace must be just and lasting. Europe's commitment signals it will stand with Ukraine, whatever the outcome in Miami. Beneath the headlines, Ukraine's war is a story of shattered lives and relentless suffering. Millions have fled their homes. Daily life is marked by loss, fear, and trauma. Ordinary Ukrainians yearn for peace, not just a ceasefire, but a return to normalcy and safety. Yet, peace cannot come at any price. Most reject surrendering territory or abandoning those under occupation. The hope for peace is matched by a fierce determination to defend their land and freedom. As Miami talks begin, Ukrainians want a peace that is both just and lasting. Their leaders must find a path that ends the bloodshed without sacrificing sovereignty or dignity. The true measure of these negotiations will be whether ordinary people can finally rebuild and look to the future with hope. The Miami talks are more than another negotiation. They're a turning point with global consequences. The U.S.-led effort injects new momentum into the stalled peace process, forcing all sides to confront hard choices. The American plan, security guarantees for Ukraine, possible territorial compromise, demands realism from both Kyiv and Moscow. These talks will test whether diplomacy can prevail over endless conflict, setting a precedent for future crises. A successful deal could reaffirm the power of international cooperation and the principle of sovereignty. Failure, however, risks deepening global instability and eroding faith in peaceful solutions. The stakes are immense. Peace in Ukraine is vital for global security, energy, and economic stability. The world must watch and hope that Miami marks the start of a new chapter, not just for Ukraine, but for peace itself.